Saw that? Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we'll get right on into it. I am Akil Missouri of A Black Man Reading and ablackmanreading.com, and this is the Real Dads Network book club that we have monthly. Sometimes we might go, bi-monthly, but we be reading though. You know what I'm saying? And we are blessed to have Marlon Peterson here with us today to discuss Bird Uncaged. This is and also Bird Uncaged and Abolitionist Freedom Song. And let me see here. I'm running two computers here. So let me get myself situated here. Here we go. Because I wanted to properly introduce the brother. But since a decade of incarceration, he has written, created programming, lectured, organized, and advocated alongside the formerly incarcerated victims of gun violence, women, immigrants, and young people. And as I already said, he's the author of Bird Uncaged and Abolitionist Freedom Song and host of the Decarcerated podcast and owner of his own social impact endeavor, the presidential group Social Enterprises and his nonprofit arm. And like I was telling the brothers earlier, he also did a TED Talk. Have you done more than one TED Talk, Marlon?
I did a TED Talk and I did a TEDx too.
TEDx. Okay. And so we're gonna jump right into conversation. But first, man, how you doing, Marlon?
I'm hungry. No. I'm all right. I'm cool. I'm thinking back to that question. I feel good. I feel accomplished for the day,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you I think you said a 2-hour call previously. So we are thankful again to have you spend some time with us. I first got acquainted. Oh, absolutely. I first got acquainted with you by reading Kiyosa's How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. And watching him like rave about, your book that was coming out. And so I was like, yo, guys, this might be something dope for us to kind of check out, right? And so, like I said, we'll jump right on in. But the first thing, could you speak a little bit about how you end up becoming incarcerated, right? These are a lot of these brothers are from New York as well. And so I think you might find that there's some understanding of how easily you can kind of fall into some of those types of situations. So do you mind speaking a little tad about that before we jump right to the book?
Yeah. Just clarify, like actually what happened? Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The end result is that I'm just working backwards instead of moving forward. Working backwards is 5 of us arrested for attempted robbery to end up in the death of 2 people and 2 other people being shot in Soho, Little Italy, back in 1999. Actually, October is the, come around that time again, it would happen, the anniversary of it. And I was a lookout in the crime.
Wow.
It was a lookout and was initially facing, life sentence in it. Eventually, didn't, obviously I'm here with you also. I did 10 years, a little over 10 years, and 15 years total with parole included. But in terms of like even how that got to that point, I think it's, people often like how you get to that instance. It's people here from New York, so I'm from Crown Heights section of New York, Brooklyn. And the folks are familiar with Crown Heights at all, but I hung outside. I wasn't, I gotta be very, there's no longer, there's an intricate story of like how I got into a position where I would be around in a place where, that would be an option for me. But in terms, I always tell people like how that happened was as simple as going downtown for a pair of sneakers.
Exactly.
Right? Like I'm just thinking, people think it's some deep, intricate thing in terms of how it happened. It was simple. I'm gonna tell you how simple it was. I was in school at the time. I was in Apex Technical School, right? I was almost 3 months from graduating from it. I had some people, people on my block. in my basement, I had a basement in my it's gonna be a laundromat in my basement in my apartment building. It's a big building. They had a laundromat in the bottom. Came home from school one day. I had put my clothes in the basement, and I had time between washing clothes and drying clothes. So I said, let me go outside in the meantime. I went outside in the meantime. My boy, so I'm close to, was like, yo, we about to go case this joint in Manhattan. I was like, yeah, whatever. But I got some time. I went along with them to case the joint. And that's how simple and silly it was. Went along with them to case the joint that day, that same evening. Or I just stayed in the train station, and one of the guys actually went inside and cased the door. And it was like, yo, we're gonna do this in 2 days. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm down. And 2 days later, we met up, at a meetup point, and we drove into Manhattan. We walked. I got out of a car. It was crammed in this car. I always say that, like, we took I remember clearly because we took the Williamsburg Bridge, and we were quiet. Nobody said anything in the car. I remember Hot 97, the radio station was on. Give me our detail how simple it was. We went up there. They said, all right, we gonna get out the car. Mom, you get out the car, just go across the street and stand in that store. I went out of the store, I got out the car, went across the street from where the thing was about to happen. Less than 10 to 15 seconds later, and I exaggerate to you not, gunshots ring out. There's chaos all over the street. I go home. I go home, I turn on the news. I see who would become my co-defendants on TV. They got caught at the scene of the crime. And 3 days later, police come get me.
Man. First of all, thanks for sharing, especially like you said, close to the anniversary, right? I can only imagine, how heavy that's got to be. And so one of the questions, and as we're going, guys, feel free to jump in and out, right? And also like add on to some of these questions that I have, because I think I tried to build them where they're like open-ended so we can all kind of, dialogue and chat. But early on in the chapter, Move On. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I thought I was muted. So before we get too far away from it, I kind of just want to weigh in on the fact, like, I'm glad you asked that question. And I think if it's not, Marlon, I think that it's critical that you do express that when you do discuss it, because being a New Yorker, I really think that people think like crime is like this intricate process that transpires. Someone has a song out. No. J. Cole used a fragment of one of Richard Pryor's stand-up routines one time, and he was describing the difference between how Black people and white people perceive cops. Like, they see cops and it's like, hey, Officer Timpson, and they're like thanking them for giving them a ticket. And it's like, when the kids are getting harassed for committing a crime, they're like, that can't be the case. You have to do something. And I think that that's that misconception that not only white people have, but I think people who live in other places think like it's hard to get caught up in crime. Like, you have to be doing something. You have to be doing something. And think we're exaggerating when we're saying we're getting arrested while driving Black, while walking Black, while breathing Black. Like, it's just that simple. Like, I know experiences walking out of my brownstone. On the days I walk out of my brownstone in a suit, good morning, how you doing? Because there are always cops posted on the corner of Nostrand and Halsey. It's a major train stop. So it's like I walk out of the brownstone, the cops with a suit on. It's like, hey, how you doing? If I'm wearing some basketball shorts and a t-shirt, they look at me up and down. The same dude, same guy. They look at me up and down, no salutations, no exchanges, no anything. They're trying to figure out whether or not they need to engage me for something. Like, so I can definitely relate to how simple that can be. And I think it's something that needs to be articulated and explained enough times so people understand that's our reality.
Can I say something? First of all, Marlon,
absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you showing up and being here with us. Incredible book. You're an incredible writer. I felt like I was reading poetry for a while. I'm like, how can someone words so beautifully together? It was awesome. But I want to say that I don't want to disagree with what's being said, but as I saw what led up to that point, because I work with a lot of young people, I saw a need for belonging. I saw a lot of brokenness. So therefore, it's not as simple as one day someone did something. It was a lot of brokenness, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain. So therefore, I don't discern the choice that I make that seems so simple that could change my life. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. You know?
You make complete sense. I think in the beginning, I mean, not in the beginning, but when Akil, when you first asked me, I was like, I can tell you about all the things that led up to the place where I would be in a position to be in that place. But like the actual day, like that, that whole thing, it was as simple as literally like how many times we going downtown. Let's go. I'm going to buy some sneakers. I'm coming with you. I'm going to buy this girl. She lived in such and such project. I come with me. I mean, it was that routine. I think when people think about, and that's what happened for a lot of the stuff that happens in our neighborhoods, right? A lot of this stuff, particularly when there's a pack of people, a lot of it is like that, right? But yes, without a doubt, like, I mean, in the book I write about, like, there's so many other things that led me up to that, being in a position where, like, I would be okay with, like, I would be in a position where people would even talk to me about robbing the store. Like, there was a lot of shit, and that's in the book. Like, I spend more time talking about those things in the book, right? You see, I spend a lot of time talking about, and very little time talking about the actual incident, not because the incident didn't matter, and not because it wasn't horrific, uncalled for, tragic, right? But because it was much more important for me, from people, I'm thinking about young folks like me, or, what I mean? Like, in real time, young people aren't realizing those things happening. Like in real time, they are realizing it, right? Like, this happened to me, damn, I ain't telling nobody about it. All right, whatever. This happened the other day. All right, whatever, man. All right, let's go jump them. Like, and at least a big thing. I'll give one example. There's in the same building that I grew up in. How old was I in 1999? I was 19. That same building I grew up in, my parents still lived there. And just the other day, a younger kid who I always, a young kid from around the neighborhood was shot. He wasn't, he was shot in his arm. Thankfully, he was fine. But I remember I was shot by a friend a year before I was arrested. And I thought that was just one standalone thing, but these things are connected. So what I said to the kid who I'm like, hey, bro, you gotta look at the signs right now. Like, just look at what's happening. I'm not saying you're gonna go to jail like me. I'm not saying you're gonna get shot again. You might get a job tomorrow. You might get a city job tomorrow. That also might happen too. But I'm also saying, like, these things, there's like a connection between these things that's happening in our lives, and a lot of it has to do with belonging or even alienation, all those things.
Yeah, and we just move on. And then this moment happens that could just turn our whole lives because we just kept moving on.
AB, you were gonna
I mean, I wanted to add to, like, what Marlon said about, while it's happening, you don't realize it. I feel like, when you grow up in these environments, it's a lot of things we just become desensitized to. I think as we get older, and if we, we're great, we're lucky enough to reach a certain age, or we get out of that situation, in hindsight, we come to realize how much, things may have affected us. But while it's going on, it's just a regular day. You with your boys, you chilling, we outside. Like, it's been times where friends of mine, I mean, people that you would never think end up in certain situations, but it's like, because you go up in an environment, you already have these certain tendencies to do certain things. And then it's like, something happened, you may not even be involved. Maybe somebody you was with was involved. Maybe somebody you just walking down the block with, he got something going on with someone else, and they come up, and now it's just survival kicks in. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's not even like it was an intricate plot. I relate to what, I understand exactly what he said, where it's like, it's not even like it was like this intricate. He probably just think, oh yeah, we just gonna go up there, boom, quick, we back in the hood, regular day. Like, you don't even really see it that way until you reach, a certain maturity level where you can look back and realize how, these things were like not normal. But to us, it is, because just growing up in that environment, you seeing it every day. Even if I was never in no gang. I was never part of anything like that. But I've had friends that have been in crazy situations where it's like, it's crazy because you think like, yo, I was just with him yesterday. Like, I know this dude. He's not like that. How? And it's like, sometimes they just happen, just regular. Yo, we gonna go to this store real quick. Okay, yeah, we out. And then you know what I mean. And then things happen, and that's what I can understand where he says it just hit. It just all happened so quick, you know. And then it's like next thing you know, he's in a situation where it's like, whoa, this is just a regular day of me and my homies going uptown. You know, it's like, huh? So I definitely understand what he said, and I understand the whole brokenness part. But I feel like while it's going on, you don't realize it at all.
And
Marlon, do you think? Oh, I was gonna ask. I think this will add like to this kind of dialogue that we're having, right? Would you say that can also be attributed to this concept of man shit, right? That you kind of, you know, open up, and even more so, I would say maybe like how we have decided to kind of internalize our version of man shit, right? Like, so, you know, of course the homie's gonna go uptown and go get some sneakers, right? Like, this is the shit that we do, right? And of course, if, you know, I might be along the way, if I might be visiting some form of sexual assault on a woman, right? When we go to a certain place, that's just man shit, right? Or if, you know, something happens to me, right? That's in line with sexual assault, that you just kind of move past it without kind of addressing the way that piles on top of a, you know, any human being. Do you think that some of that is attributed to that concept?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, you know, you hit a lot of just little like key points in the question, and just the thing is, I call it man shit. You know, the theoretical term is patriarchy, and all that, but I wrote the book in the term of like how I might understand it if I was, you know, 17 or something, right? You know what I mean? And the things are so subtle. So like one thing I always think about, I don't think I wrote about this in the book, but in the past I've written about street harassment, right? You know, hollering at girls on the street. Growing up, first of all, I didn't know that was a term until maybe definitely until after I came home from prison, when there was something was like street harassment. I was like, what does that mean? It's like when you're on the corner and you're doing all this sort of stuff. So first of all, like, you know, that awareness didn't come until my 30s. And partially, I was away from society for a whole decade, so I wasn't even thinking about that. But prior to going to prison, yeah, we did it all, of course. We hung outside, we yelled, hollered, cursed out. We did all the things. And one thing I always remember about that was that one, I really, once, if and a few times, if a girl stopped to talk to me, I didn't know what to think next. It was literally about the performance of my boys, or I'm outside, and so people might be in my mind, people looking at me, right? I'm a guy, that's what guys do. I want to show that like I could be just as loud and braggadocious and obnoxious as my people around me, so I'm gonna do that. And the girls who are walking by don't really matter, really. They're just an object of my performance for my people around me, right? So when a person stopped, let me say something about this some interesting. I don't think I've spoken about this yet, actually, any interviews. I speak about the sexual assault. Like when we we did sexual assault. There was no actual penetration or anything like that, but we held her and we wanted to, and we made her scared. And I don't know how she felt about that years to now, right? We created a harmful environment for her. The way I met her, we were at the time, you know anything about Brooklyn, we were in Albee Square Mall, right? Me and a couple of my boys, we had smoked some weed, we went to Albee Square Mall, we were hanging inside the mall, you know, posted up against wherever we was posted up, girls walking by, it was a group of girls that walked by. I saw a girl, I hollered at her, they walked a couple feet past and then they stopped. So I walked up, and the girl who I hollered at is not the one who was interested in me. It was some other girl who was just me, and I wasn't attracted to her. And in that moment, I was like, and you know what I did? My dumb ass at the time, I didn't know what to say. I gave her my boy's phone number. I don't know, right? I'm just saying, like, listen, I gave her my boy's phone number, right? Not thinking they would follow up. A couple weeks later, or a couple days later, I don't remember the distance, she called him. He's like, yo, da-da-da. He's like, yo, Marlon, we can get them to come to the block. I was like, all right, but you got to be a part of it. So we got them to come to the block one night, we got them to come to the block one night, and the story about the sex happened that way. there was never, and I'm saying this in a way that's harsh, it's hard to say, but we did not care about let me say I don't want to say, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I did not care about her or even having sex with her. I cared about the performance. Right, it started with me performing in the mall, like doing what guys do, performing. And it just so happened that we manipulated her into this situation, right? The reason why I actually never even spoke about that, but like the reason why what brings it up, what makes me bring it up right now, is this notion of like that you kind of spoke about, right? And that's like that man shit that we're performing for each other. Or even when I speak about the sexual assault that happened to me, right? Man shit, right? Because it was the man that did it to me. I was afraid of telling anybody about that, not only because like it hurt me, but because in my mind, being homophobic in my mind as I was at that point in time, it was like, if I tell people this, they're gonna think I'm soft and they're gonna think I'm gay. So you know what? I'm gonna just hold this down to myself and not tell nobody that I'm extremely traumatized at a 14-year-old child. Because even at 14, I'm thinking like, I'm a man, I'm 14, right? I'm a 14-year-old kid. I might have still been watching some cartoons at that moment. Maybe not as many, but it's a few, right? But at that point in time, because I didn't want to be looked at a certain way, I didn't want to sort of be out of that man category where we could see what a man, how he should be and act. I allowed that trauma to build up to me. And then we go to like, I think Mike earlier in terms about like what led to incarceration. It wasn't just that thing. That was one of the things. I didn't realize until years later, obviously, but that was one of the things, right? Because that thing led to the one thing. I didn't know how to deal with that pain, that harm. I kept it to myself. I felt like, you know what? Fuck that. Like, you know what I mean? This ain't gonna be happening to me no more. Like, you know what I mean? I gotta like switch shit up a little bit, right? And I was 14. It didn't switch up. I still graduated from high school. I still worked odd end jobs, McDonald's and Wendy's. I was still doing things like a teenager should. But I also had these things that happened to me that I didn't know how the fuck to deal with it. And part of me, how I dealt with it, I'm gonna hang outside, but now I'm not gonna hang outside because that's normal. But you know what? I'm gonna engage in things that I probably knew I shouldn't engage in anymore because like, why not? What's the worst that could happen to me? It already happened in my mind, you know? And that's a child, that's a teenage boy's logic.
Yeah.
I think that's why mentorship is so important. And your book, Marlon, is like so ideal for us to unpack with young people so they can see themselves and realize I'm not alone. I mean, the conversations that can come out of this book, I mean, every scenario of our journey is like in your life. I'm like saying, wow, you know, the generational conflict, you know, the religion conflict of one generation, the selection. And I just want to say this, why it resonated so much with me. I was talking to a young man and he was telling me, do you know what? They're accusing me of rape. And I'm like, well, what happened? And when he told me what happened, I'm like saying, bro, he said, but I just, and when he explained, I'm like, but he had no concept or understanding that what he did was rape.
Yeah.
He felt entitled. He felt that that's what we do. And I'm like, and when I was reading your book, I'm like saying, wow, we need this in every young circle of young men to have some conversations.
I definitely agree with that because even how he said that man shit that he was talking about, I feel like that's what even led up to him going through with the whole situation where he talks about how they were. Well, he just said they were in a car and it was total silence the whole ride. So that means everybody knows.
Yes.
But it's like if nobody say something, yeah, we got like I ain't gonna I ain't gonna be soft like. You feel me? So and it's like I resonate with that because there's been times where it's me and a couple friends and it's like you about to do something you shouldn't be doing, but it's like nobody speaks up and we all just go through it. And it's like and that's where the mentorship I feel like Uncle Mike said is very important because we got to start realizing that it's okay to not want to not be the have to be the tough one, because you know when you go up in the hood, you got to stand on what we gonna do. Like you got to stand on what you say. You got to go through it. If we all doing it, we all doing it. It's no backing out. It's no. So that's like, you know, as he said that man shit, like I thought about when he said they all in the car and just quiet, everybody was on that man shit. And I'm pretty sure since it's total silence, everyone knew, like everyone knew, but it's like people probably looking for somebody to say something, maybe look uncomfortable, but it's like all of that was probably internal, but externally, everyone's just all right.
Yeah.
You know, so
people want to be saved. I think about that in Boys in the Hood. You think about the moment when like Cuba Gooding Jr. is in the car and they're about to go get some get back, and he in the car and he's just mad and frustrated. And then I can't remember, is it his father or whoever it is, kind of like gets him out the car. He's like,
yeah, they're like, yeah,
right. I think in that moment with us, we all wanted somebody to get us out that car. Like, I feel like we all wanted somebody, because it's think about it. We were 5 men, all between ages of 19 to 23, 24, in a car, hip hop playing on the radio. We driving through Brooklyn. The driver doesn't know how to get to Williamsburg Bridge. Nobody is offering him directions to like, maybe turn this block. We just quiet.
yeah,
Literally, it was the weirdest thing that there was silence, radio silence the entire ride until we got to Manhattan. It was like, get out the car, this person get out the car. Everybody wanted somebody to save us. The point I was saying is that, like, Abdul, right? Is that like that man? Like, I mean, I don't know for certain because I haven't had this conversation with all of them, but I can assume that we were all scared as fuck in that car, and we were all willing for somebody to like say nah. But nobody want to be that person to say it, because then because if that one person says it, the other part of man shit is gonna be like, fuck out of here. Know what you saying, though, right? Because then it's shit. In some ways, it could shift like that. It could shift where like, well, now I get to pronounce my manhood, my man shit on you because you're now the soft one, right? And throw it off to you. You know what I mean? Listen, when in the process of me writing this, it's not only about my experience, but I mean, I spent a decade up top in jail, but also from the neighborhood, from the community. And I worked with a lot of young people over the years. Like the book stops when I came home from prison, but since I've been home from prison, I've been in community working with young people in Brownsville, in Crown Heights, in Flatbush, and Bushwick, you know what I mean? In an in-depth way, in a real personal way. And I see the same things. I see the same things. I see the same quiet, the same fear, the same insecurities, the same anxieties, the same ways in which we are afraid to say, like, I'm hurt. Instead, we say, I gotta fuck that nigga up. Like, but he hurt. Like, that's we gotta like deal with that feeling first. Like, that hurt me. He took my money, or what? Like, that made me feel scared. We don't say that. We, because oftentimes there's in a space for us to say that. And my thing was like, let me write this book and say, this is fuck that. This is how I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like you said, like you passed this book too, right? On let me see. So there's this, we've already talked about like man shit, right? And I was doing I call it recon, right? Well, like watch whoever I'm talking to's videos. And I was watching you, Tongo, and Kiese kind of talk. And Tongo had like a lot of different types of principles that I think different types of principles, and something that your brother that you was locked down with, I think his name was Moses, right? They have like similar sensibilities in which Moses was talking about, like, you have to understand about the lineage of your principles, right? And so I think sometimes, so I want to talk a little bit about the importance of the lineage of your principles and the ways in which Black nationalism and pride are capable of transformation. Like, that was another heavy line that you had in there. So you said, don't single out the worst parts of Black men from the worst parts of all men. The brute parts of Black nationalism and pride are capable of transformation. What can we do to ensure that we take the right approach to our lineage of principles to have that transformation where we can bring Black nationalism and Black pride into this new space?
First of all, the quote, that was my quote, right?
Yeah, that's you.
It's funny. Like I think about, I swear to you, sometimes I felt like I was a vessel in writing this book. Because sometimes I'd be like, yeah, man. But
man, that was like,
because your expression was like, wow, that was profound.
Yeah,
you heard it. You was like, oh,
you was like,
that shit is deep.
Yo,
I said that. Like when I looked at you, you was
hold
like,
on, that's me.
I mean, my writing process is like deeply inspired by music, and when I write, I lie to you not, like I need to have music on, and I need to have a rhythm. Like I write in a rhythm, and it comes like it rhythmically comes out. So I guess when people said it was poetic or lyrical or whatever, it's like that's the only way words come out of my head. Anyways, in terms of answering the question though, my introduction, particularly when I think about my time in jail, my introduction to anything other than religion, because you read the book, I was deeply into my Jehovah's Witness stuff. My introduction to anything other than reading the Bible book or anything like that was through that meeting with those men, right? And they were talking about all the Black nationalism thing, but they also talking about, family and love and being married, like all the things. And that opened me up to like, oh, well, let me read some other stuff. Let me read this other type. Let me read this type of thing. And let me have this different type of conversation. And it evolved to who started the evolution into who I am becoming now, right? I think the thing is this, I think knowing about yourself, knowing about your history, knowing your lineage, I mean, I'm not saying anything that has never been said ad nauseum, right? We need to know about what you need to know that stuff, right? It's important for us because you have something to hold on to, right? It's why it's why, for what it's worth, that's why white people love America so much. We may not agree with it, but it's why they hold on to a thing, the revolution, all that sort of stuff, right? Even though they may misunderstand and have a lot of lies infused with that. The point I'm getting to though, is that it can be a catalyst for transformation for selves and our communities. I think sometimes in my opinion, my humble opinion, where the problem lies is that we don't also realize that Black nationalist thought is also about evolution, right? And that, we also got to evolve into it, into it now, who we are as a world, who we are as a society, right? That when you think about people, not only you think about Malcolm X, but you think about people before Brother Malcolm X, people who came before him in the period between Marcus Garvey and X. Because if you think about Harlem particularly, there were a lot of Black nationalist music movements that started in that period between Marcus Garvey and thing. One is I think about is the Moorish Science Temple, right? I think, because I know because there's a brother who I was really close to inside who was in the Moorish Science Temple, or even the Nation of Gods and Earth. Like right now, those things are connoted in popular Black cultures, like the Hotepian movement, right? And, right, and a lot of because they may hold on, to some arcane with views of people, of women, of society, those sort of things. While not here to be like, to critique those things necessarily, the point I'm getting, the one thing I do want to emphasize is the importance of evolution, right? Which is why, like, I love the hell out of a brother Malcolm X, because what draws me to his story is not, I wasn't a pimp, I wasn't a hustler on the street, I wasn't none of that stuff. I might have been from the street, but I ain't had the same life as Malcolm. I ain't gonna act like I did. But the thing that I didn't outside of the carceral experience, but what I do connect with, particularly if you read his book, but also if you study his life, there's a constant evolution of how he saw the world. And he wasn't afraid to acknowledge that I messed up, or I don't believe in that anymore, right? He said things like, I don't believe in certain things or whatever it is. And whether or not you agree or disagree with what it was, he was human enough to admit to that. And I think for when you think about our Black nationalist movements, we need to be human enough to acknowledge that there are also flaws and faults in it that we need to evolve from. I think about somebody like, particularly if you, like I spent some time on a continent, and while I can never say I know half about the history of the continent, I'm not going to, just because I've been there, I know all about the history of the continent. I do know that some of our revolutionary leaders who I love, who we may have learned from in various ways, whether it be through text or word or what have you, or proximity, had parts of them in their Black nationalistic and their African or Pan-Africanist ways that probably don't include girls in any sort of real substantial way, or people who are queer in any substantial way. Like, what I'm saying to you is that, like, I think it's important to acknowledge that they are like, our Black national moves are important. They're why we are here today. They're the reason why we have a bell hook. They're the reason why we have an orgy law. There's the reason why this is why we have these things. But also part of our job as in the present moment is to evolve too, and understand that there's some things that are no longer work for us. There's some things that work for me in prison that don't work for me out here. There's some shit that worked for me in jail. There's some shit that I was about to say some shit if I was to go back to jail. Let me not say that. But there's some things that I know that while I was inside, that worked for me in a healthy way. I'm not saying in a non-healthy way. That worked for me in a healthy way inside. That don't work out here in the free world. There's some things in our Black national moves that might have been healthy at the moment, might have been, that are not healthy now. It's not to take away from the foundation or the core, the framework, or to dishonor them. Just understand that what they would have wanted us to do is to move us forward.
Word. Kendrick, you got a question? I see you got your hand up. Or
yeah, so I'm completely in line with the point that you're making, and I think when we articulate that, I think we do ourselves a disservice. We have and we continue to, because we talk about Black nationalism and revolution. You can't not like immediately mention James Baldwin. Like,
oh yeah.
And he's left out because of his sexuality and he may have been a small man, but his prowess and his presence was incalculable. And it's like we leave that out because we feel like we're owning who and what he is. No, you're just acknowledging greatness, because you think about all of those things that were transpiring. And just full disclosure, I'm very good friends with the entire Shabazz family. So I understand how appreciative they are now of this impartation of Malcolm's life as it pertains to Bumpy, because people wanted to take him from the person he came to Harlem as, and then immediately just run him into this great guy who was going to change the world. Like you said, it was an evolution. It was a transition. There's no way you could have functioned, much less resided in Harlem, and not moved in a manner that was disruptive to Bumpy Johnson. It just wasn't possible. If you understand the history of that enclave, like, he was that dude. Like, if it happened, what? It would be addressed on a regular basis. And so when we're moving and we're evolving, we have to see these aspects and address them and correct them. Because if we didn't include them, we stay in that place. And we allow this society to dictate how we progress into something. So it's like we got to choose sides. It's like, no, I had this conversation, I think I might even mention it to Mike today. Like, when I make that statement about rooting for anybody who's Black, I am. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I may not necessarily know what it is that they're perpetuating, but if I, just like society, if me and a white man stepped out to the street and ran in two opposite directions, I don't have to ask anybody on here who the cops are going to chase. I can be wearing the best suit on the planet. I'm a Black man running down the street, white man, he could be homeless, look like he just ate a person, blood running down his cheek. They're going to chase me. And so in that construct, we need to learn how to lean into each other, because that leaning a lot of times is what allows us to be who we are, as opposed to leaning out. Because when you lean out from someone, that's when they're prone to perform, like what you were talking about performing.
Yeah.
Because when you lean back, the person you lean back from is getting the impression that you want to show. That's why the audience sits back here and someone's up there, because they're there for a performance. But when you lean in, you give the person the opportunity to whisper to you, hey, I'm not all right today. As opposed to when you fall back and it's like, show me something. Go ahead, nigga. Like, as opposed to you leaning in and giving them the opportunity, the power to say, hey, I'm not okay. Can you hold that for me? Like, I need to hear this. I need someone to be in this place with me right now. As opposed to, like I said, we retract and they're like, okay, I got to show them. I'm not that dude. We got to correct that, because we constantly function in this thing where we don't see each other's humanity, but we see everybody else's. We see everybody else's, but somehow we can justify looking at, and you know what that is? If you haven't assessed it, our kids can do what they do to each other because of how they feel about themselves. So
Yes.
someone who looks like them and they're experiencing self-hate, they're gonna impart that. They're like, they see themselves like, you're just like me. Because the human psyche, until it's been fully damaged, can't harm itself. Any one of you guys, if you're interested, try biting your thumb off right now. You couldn't.
I was gonna do it Friday. I ain't gonna bite it.
Yeah, unless you're psychologically imbalanced, your body will not allow it to intentionally harm itself. But when you've amassed a degree and a level of pain that you can't control, you're gonna eject it on whoever, however. You got a color, I got a color, whatever. You stepped on my sneaker, you said something that doesn't really matter, but that's that pain. That's that thing that we were talking about earlier that doesn't allow us to control who and what we are, because we're trying to convince somebody of something that we think matters to them.
You just preach the word, Mr. Wonderful. I mean, that was a special moment. You got this glow. Everything's rolling.
Well, I have a question.
It's that lotion.
So I have a question, not just for you,
go ahead, brother,
for the Marlon, but anyone. So, Marlon, you are so transparent in sharing your story. You shared our story. You shared our children's story. So how do we change the narrative? It's great that we can have this conversation with each other here. And, we're fortunate and blessed to have you here. But where do we go from here? What do we do to change the narrative? How do we reach the generation behind us? Yes.
I like to add too, because I think this might segue us into like a question. And what role does abolition play in that? Right? Like this idea that abolition is about creation and like restoration. What role can abolition play in that? What Uncle Mike said.
Yeah, thanks. I think about in terms of the first part of the question about, what can we do to change the narrative and change the conditions, and then the abolition part. The part, we spoke about the sexual assault, right? We call them trains in the hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about that because I don't think enough people realize how common those things are, right? And also because of those of us who might have participated in any capacity, also at the moment probably thought it was good fun. I'm saying I wrote about it also because I know that nobody else talks about that, right? Most people don't end up getting arrested for it. Most people end up going to college, going to high school, graduating, going to college, getting married or having kids and having a wonderful life, becoming preachers and teachers and going to the army, like become regular people, right? What I'm saying is that that happens and no one talks about it. So in terms of changing the narrative, I want to just also say that, like, I don't think some of the things I spoke about in this book or things that other people have spoken about or written about or what have you, I don't know if we've communicated enough yet to the young people around us, right? I don't think we've spoken about trains enough now, so we can move on to about healthy relationships now, right? I don't think that we've even started that for the most part, right? And I also think part of the reason why, because there hasn't been space for it, either we haven't created space for it, or we're a little bit precarious about being known to be complicit or a part of those things at some point in our past because of where we at now, right?
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? So let me answer your question, what we can do. I think since I was inside, I've been mentoring people. Since I was in prison, I've been mentoring and sharing stories with young folks, right? I think that's something we can also keep doing. But I think also thinking about, we think about the abolitionist idea, kind of going into that thing that which you asked me about. It's about sort of, when I say creating, it's about like creating these different type of conversations with groups of people we never were allowed to create some point. Let me start speaking abstractly. You go to schools, right? And I remember when I first started going into schools, when I first came home from jail, it's only because I had a friend that was a administrator that was allowed to go into schools, right? For the most part, back in 2010, when I first came home, like people who did time in jail weren't like, not unless you were a parent or something, like you weren't allowed to come to school, and definitely not to be with kids. In fact, in order to get the clearance from the Department of Education, like I couldn't get the clearance to like be in a class by myself with kids.
Yeah.
Right? My friend who's a principal, like, you know, she could make it happen. But for me, when I started trying to get to other schools, we had to rely on other people to sort of apply for us to be. The point I'm getting to is that like, we're now recently creating a space for people who have had these experiences. I'm just talking about people who did time, to be able to be in positions where they could even share, right? Because systemically, we don't allow it, right? Abolition is one thing about creating things that we haven't had before. I'm not saying that the answer is to have people who did time to fix everything in our communities. I'm also not saying that. I'm just giving an example of a thing that was frowned upon, unheard of, illegal, even, right?
Yeah.
And like, and what is happening, right? I mean, being with kids in the schools, one of the reasons who I was thinking about as I was writing this book, right? Because of their experiences. So I learned from them too, and how to communicate with them. That's why the language in the book, I go from speaking probably like in an intellectual academic way to speaking like a dude on the corner, all in one sentence sometimes, right? Because I understand that there's some different people have to understand what I'm saying. But also the other thing about the abolitionist thing, in terms of like how to apply this, is the question that Mike asked before at the beginning, when he was like, all right, I know what happened when you got to like the incident with the crime, but I'm sure there was other things that led to that. Right? That's the thing that is like, you can ask that because we're here in this room and we're talking, but in real time, most people don't ask that question. And I'll give you a case in point. When you see the thing that happens on TV, whatever the crime happened, the shooting, whatever, right? Myself included, my initial reaction oftentimes is like, damn, that dude need to go to jail. That's as a person who doesn't believe him, that's my initial reaction. The abolitionist concept is like, hold on, Marlon, all right, you're allowed to have that reaction, but ask the deeper questions. But what do you think might have led this kid to doing that thing?
Why?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, why? Like, you know, in the book, I wrote that chapter dash, literally not only to speak about my thing, but because I was at this funeral for this kid. The kid who I was working with, 19-year-old kid, got killed. And I'm at the funeral and I'm seeing all these kids at the funeral home, looking at them crying and all the things, or trying to act like they're not crying. You know, they put their shades on, they act like they're not crying, whatever it is. And that preacher is talking about that dash. He's talking about the day you're born to the day you die. But I'm like, nah, like what happened to the point where like these were little babies? I was a little baby at once. What happened to them?
Yeah.
Because we don't ask that, because obviously usually the incident at hand, the thing that they were a part of, might be in some cases too gruesome to look any deeper. But like, I mean, what benefit are we doing to the next person in our community? We're not looking into what led to that thing.
Yeah. When I read it, it led me to these two books. We Do This Till We Free Us by Miriam Kaba, and How We Get Free. And there's a story in this book that really kind of speaks to like how a world might look when we do consider something that's about healing before we consider something punitive, right? And it's like a return to some of those practices that come from you know, some of the things that we had prior to, you know, coming to America, and some of the practices that we had here for those of us who, you know, kind of subscribe to maybe that Moorish thought that we were already here. And for those of us who kind of subscribe to the thought that, of course, we have Native American ancestors too. And so they have like circles in here where, you know, someone does harm and they have to be in the circle and they have to understand the harm that harm brings to the community, right? So there's like this real community aspect. And over time, the hope is that you heal these types of behaviors before they get to the point where they can be so detrimental, right? And of course, you know, abolitionism as a concept is not perfect, right? And so, and it's difficult to kind of like Marlon said, our first thought is, damn, he finna go to jail, right? Because we're raised in this system where our first thought has been taught to be good or bad, jail or out, right? And so through some of these modes of thinking, like he said, like getting these folks into the schools or the things that I do with my students. I brought back Teen Summit in my class. Like, so I round the students up and I literally do Teen Summit. You know what I'm saying? And that's been transformative for those kids. And oh, did I lose my sign? Okay, yeah, that's been transformative for those kids, right? But how many teachers are doing that? How many teachers are creating that space? And so I think like that whole idea of creation is something that we should like definitely look into.
Yeah. I definitely agree with everything that's said, and I feel like the gateways to everything getting better have started to open. And the reason why I say that is because how connected we are as a people now. I feel like before we weren't be able to be as connected because there weren't things like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, et cetera, all these social media platforms and platforms that can bring groups together, as well as these, these platforms. For example, even this show is a prime example of that. And I feel like Marlon said, it's just about people talking about it more. And I feel like that's getting better because the current generation, the generations that are growing up, they're becoming how would I say that they're just becoming much more, they're much more accepting of things like therapy and talking about how you feel, and expressing your feelings in a way where, even though where before to be looking at like you're being soft right now, it's like, damn, like people are becoming much, and I realize even with the younger kids, they're much more sensitive. They're still kids at the end of the day, when we all kids, but they're much more sensitive to like feelings, and because it's talked about much more than it was before. Because I feel like even before, when you had mentors, they asked like, oh, what's going on, but it never got too deep. It never got to where it's like you really talking about like, oh, I went through this and it made me feel like this. And I feel like just that discourse and just people talking about it and having shows like this and, all those things are very important, because kids see it and you never know who sees it. They can just be browsing the internet, going through something, and see somebody from, across the country talking about something, and it can help them even, and it's much easier for them to accept it because it's not someone that they know directly, or someone that's going to see them on a daily, or someone that sees them in the hood or wherever they're at. So I feel like the gates have definitely started to open, but I feel like just we have to talk about these things. Definitely, we just have to talk about it more. With the system and everything, it's going to be a long time before abolition and everything, but I feel like just the conversation alone is shifting a lot, because I remember when I was younger, when people would get bullied or have feelings and things, it's like, bro, get over it. But it's like but it's like now it's a way different conversation, and people are much more sensitive to things like that, and people are much more sensitive to how people feel. So I feel like it's definitely started. It's still a long way to go, but just the conversation is definitely important. And I know it's like, so and this is like even how you said how you realize like the damage and hurt it. As I think about it, like something or realizing like what causes you to have these reactions, like when you feel hurt, it's the hurt, and it's like even just things you may be numb to. I mean, this happened to me probably like a couple years ago. I remember I was at a party and like a shootout started, and me, I'm like, okay, boom, I'm already like, okay, I already know, boom, boom, boom. If it's I hear, boom, go this way. And it's like other people are just running around like chickens with their heads, or they don't know what the hell, because they've never been in situations like that. And it made me realize how like normal that was to me, like just growing up, going to parties every day, after the party, they, you see, all right, boom, they ain't had it. Okay, it's lit after this party.
Yeah.
So you already, you already know. So it's like, it's crazy. Like when I thought about it, I was like, at first I was like, damn, how the hell they on? But then I thought about how crazy it was, how normal that was to me, and how how I become so used to just like, okay, and that's not normal. And as I hit this age, I think of like my cousin's 14, 15, 16, 7. I'm like, that's crazy, but it's just, I like, yeah, it was just like a revelation where I just realized like so much was wrong that I didn't even realize was wrong.
That's why I started the Teen Summits. I had a student get hit by a car, right? And continued to walk to school and was in my class, right? And I was like, you good? I was like, you good? Because, like, what, there might be 150,000 kids that went to school today in Mississippi, and that's not a reality for folks to get hit by a vehicle, to not receive help, like for it to be right in front of the school, and then for you to be in here doing my bell ringer. Like, are you all right? You know, you want to talk about it? You know, he was like, man, you know, they do it every day, like they always out there trying to hit kids. I was like, nah,
Yeah,
nah, like
yeah.
we need to acknowledge this, right? Like, you know, do you want to go to clinic, et cetera, man? So I've seen that, because some of these babies that I teach think that some of these things that happen to them, that's a normal reality, and unfortunately they are in an environment where that has become the norm, right? And so I think that is where we gotta, you know, kind of get in there. Kendrick, did you have something? But first I want to know, Marlon, we've had you for an hour too. You know,
Already? Oh shit, yeah, it's been an hour. I didn't even
yeah,
realize
yeah,
that. I was having a good
yeah,
time. Um,
yeah,
I give it a
yeah.
couple more minutes, but yeah, let's
Okay.
yeah.
All right, well, Kendrick, did you have something, brother? I seen the
Yeah,
Kendrick shake and the hand up. I
yeah,
want to
I
acknowledge it.
did. I did, but I don't want to. I think it would take us to a really intense place that I don't think folks are prepared to go.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
He's gonna throw the bait out there. That's
I
him.
say no. Let me rephrase that we may not have the time to go,
Okay.
Oh, okay.
because I think that there was always this apparent level. There's always this level of hypocrisy to me that exists
Mhm.
in these conversations that we all just kind of just let through. It's like, because I don't think anyone's beyond performing.
Oh yeah.
In some instances, and I think in some instances, it's individuals' intention to kind of spare folks. So I think you guys know I'm quick to push some shit to the edge and take something somewhere that I know folks don't want to go. And it's not that I don't care, it's because I think it's necessary. So I don't think it's too many of you who missed the message I sent in the chat today, free R. Kelly. I knew I wasn't going to get any response to that, because it's weighty. It's weighty. But I say that to say, and the reason why I did that. I sent that to a bunch. I sent it every time I thought about it. I sent it to someone because
I didn't hear it. Send what?
I sent a message that said free R. Kelly.
Okay.
And I did it because I'm trying to force people to be honest with themselves. Not that I'm better or I know or whatever, but I think it's a matter that at some particular point, we need to really leap over to that other side, as opposed to us just sticking our toe in there and saying it's too cold, it's too hot, and then we come back to our comfort zone. Anyone who has something to say, and I literally am going to say anyone, everyone, anyone who has anything to say about the situation with R. Kelly, to the extent of what he deserved and this, and the other, is a hypocrite. Because we encourage the thing that he did, what he was found guilty of, we encourage it daily, abhorrently. And that's whether you listen to the music or not. If you're not speaking against it, then you're basically, they said silence is the same thing as being a part of something. So we're sitting here talking about, oh, R. Kelly's this terrible person and he got what he should have got, and this, and the other. But we can sit here and listen to Megan Thee Stallion and every other rapper that I can think of, with the exception of maybe J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. And you can probably find something in their music too that is outright and blatantly disastrous to our existence. Damn a culture, damn this time, like it's what is systematically destroying us. And we only respond to what they say we should. Like, this R. Kelly thing was terrible. Oh my God, this and the other. That's absurd if we're just going to do it when they say it's okay, as opposed to us responding to it collectively. Like, people want to make references and comparisons to what was and what is. It's still not justification. We can go all the way back to Isaac Hayes and all of those other folks. There was questionable things transpiring then. And until we get to the point where we're having real conversations about who's doing us the most harm, we're not ever going to advance at any significant rate. So I don't, like, when the question was asked, like, what do we do? There has to be a very intentional effort to address what transpires in our community. Not passive, random, occasional conversations, like a literal, there shouldn't be a Black man on this planet without Black boys that they're mentoring. Not one. There shouldn't be one Black man on this whole damn planet, no matter what their experience is. Because if we consider what Marlon's transition has been and what his escalation is, if you listen to society, we should throw him out. Like, he's been in jail, like he's a scourge. He's probably going to teach more people more things than all of those Ivy League scholars and all of those folks who switched over to the other side, because to them, that's succeeding. Success should be a statement and a remnant of how many people you've affected in a positive way. Not just talking about a job. So I'll reiterate that time and again. If we're not literally and actively and intentionally grooming the next generation, we can cancel it, because the residual effects will show themselves at some point. And usually when they do, it's too late.
So
Go ahead, bro.
I can't agree more with Kendrick. You know, he's right on point. We should be mentoring, we should be reaching out to others. But I just want to also say that we have to be so intentional about our healing so that we can be there for the next generation. I remember I was mentoring, this is quite a few years ago, I was mentoring a young fella, and he expressed to me, he said, I have something really to share with you I've never shared with anyone else. He was violated. So I got him into therapy, talked with him, and he mentioned to me he was going to go home and tell his parents. And I'm like, oh, okay, talk to your therapist about that, you know, be ready. Make a long story short, he eventually told his parents. Come to find out, his father never told him that he was violated. His mother was violated, and they actually turned on him because they couldn't handle it, because he was triggering so many emotions and things that they were suppressing. And in time, it blew up. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We have to continue on our healing journey so that we can really be in a place that we can be there for the next generation.
I wonder if I could jump in a little something. I mean, I think about, like, to this day, my mother doesn't like to talk about anything that happened, prison or anything. Like, she doesn't like, she doesn't say don't talk about it, but it makes her feel not in a good place. She doesn't like to talk about things like that, right? And so she hasn't turned on me for anything, but she doesn't want to approach things, particularly things that also happen in her life, right? That a lot of us are clueless to. So I'm just bringing that on to say, like, these things take a lot of trial and error. And sometimes there's probably more error than not sometimes. But I think we got to persist. The thing I want to just kind of go back to with Kendrick and his points, when it comes to the R. Kelly thing, yes, no question. There's a lot of hypocrisy. I think we all live in a place of gray, right? But the other thing about the R. Kelly thing that timing is everything. And in terms of, like, when you speak about a thing, what are the lessons that we learned from R. Kelly's situation? That's the thing that I ask about. And not so much about the lessons about industry that protected him and, the money that protected him and the people who had money invested in him and his projects and all that sort of stuff. But the lessons that I question, that I'm interested in, that is hard to ask in the moment. Like, this brother was sexually assaulted as a child. He was probably illiterate for a good part of his life, maybe still, I don't know. And I think about, those, I just, like, what lessons are we learning about the boys that we are missing in our neighborhoods, that we're missing? Because obviously people miss shit with him before he became Aura. There's a lot of shit that was missed with him. By the time he became Aura, we put money and power and fame, you couldn't get to him anymore. And he's probably still, I don't know where his mental state is now, but forget him at the moment who he is now. What are the lessons that we need to learn about Black boys like R. Kelly, like Robert before he became a grown man? That's the thing that I think, so we think about, you asked a question about abolition, that's the thing about abolition that intrigues me. And I'm gonna say intrigues me because it's not like it ain't my religion. I ain't gonna die for it, right? But, like, it is something that intrigues me, that I believe offers some hope, is that it asks you, as I said before, to ask deeper questions, to go to the root of what the hell is happening here. he's committed some of the most monstrous acts I've ever heard in plain sight, bar none. But also, I remember I watched the documentary. I don't know if y'all, I watched the documentary that came out 2 years ago, whatever. And I knew nothing about that man's childhood. I didn't know that he was raped as a kid, that he was illiterate. Like, I didn't know those things. And to me, I was like, well, going back to what Mike asked about earlier in terms of like, I know what got you to prison, but what are the things that led you to that? Like, what are the things that led that brother to that, to being that type of harmful human being? He's doing some harmful shit, some shit that I would never imagine. If somebody is doing something that you can never imagine, that means they've been through some shit that you can never imagine. You know what I'm saying? Even in me writing about my sexual assault, I don't know who I don't know if this person's dead or alive, but if you read the chapter, I'm interested in like, what the fuck happened to you? Like, what happened to you that you did this, and probably to other people? Like, what happened? That's the things that we're missing. I think we live in a place where because we invested in, it's the only thing we got. I'm speaking about the criminal justice system. We're concerned about the end, what you did and what's going to happen to you. That's what that is set up for, and that's all we got. But what I'm saying is that also is like we're in a place now. You spoke about kids now asking about how you feel, and I think Abdul was sort of alluding to that, right? Like they're asking different questions now. This is progress, because as we need more of that, because we don't want shit like R. Kelly to be happening. Because first of all, we know shit like that happen in our neighborhoods. Now, obviously not on a grand scale where you got a whole industry supporting you, but we know we got family members supporting people that do it. We got aunts and uncles who supporting shit. We know that in our neighborhoods. We got the dude down the block. When I used to go to school, when I used to be a high school kid going to high schools looking for girls, my man who was 30 years old was right with us. Mm-hmm. And his boys, and they was right with us hollering at girls too, right? Like, or we knew girls who were in high school who were going out with guys who were pulling up to school in their cars, and they was definitely grown men pulling up to, like, that was happening in plain sight. R. Kelly is not an anomaly. The level to which he did it is different. The point, though, I'm getting long-winded here. I'm sorry for that. Is like, what are the lessons that we learned from R. Kelly? Is it only that? One of the lessons that we learned is the fact that women's voices have been quieted, and the way industry and society can help quiet women's voices. That's one of the things that we've learned, and an important thing to learn and to apply. The one thing that we're not asking is, what about the Black boys who going through shit that he went through? We got to be able to see beyond his monstrosity. We don't want to ask it in public, self-included, because of what I said, talking about space, it seems as if we're trying to empathize with him.
Yeah.
And I don't, right now, that's not, and maybe we are, not for him in terms of we want him to come home or we want him to be like not held accountable, but empathize with, like, even if he ain't ready for it, because he might not be ready for it too. I don't know where he is, as I said, but like for a person to engage in unimaginable acts, we have to wonder what unimaginable things happen to that person. That shit is it's insane, the shit that he was doing. And I just wanted to say again, like the book ended, what lessons are we learning about? What lessons are we learning to share with our Black boys?
Just for clarity's sake, I just want to make sure you guys understand. I in no way, shape, or form stand on the side of him. My point is that as opposed to us going with the narrative and the general disposition that, yeah, this is where we are. Hey, guys, we gave you justice. These things should prompt discussions and dialogue, like you were saying, amongst us to be like, what is this and where is the next? Because there's a damn good chance there is a next one, because what we need to correct that is what we're not doing, because falling in line with the systematic response to this. It's always reactive as opposed to proactive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be here now talking to them when they're little and pliable. What's that saying? It's easier
to fix children than to fix broken men.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Douglas. Yeah.
I was definitely, that's what I took from what you were saying, Kendrick, basically, that you got to continue to push the line. If you're going to push it right here, you need to push it right here. You need to kind of like get that going. And go ahead, brother. You said Frederick Douglass?
Yeah, that quote.
Yes, Frederick Douglass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
An abolitionist.
The abolition. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that I definitely see and agree with what Kendrick was saying, and I understand. But I feel like that we're getting to that point where people can start having that conversations, but at this moment it's so hard because people, especially now, is like when people have their emotions and everything invested, it's like their first reaction, even if you bring up the name rapist, this, that, it's automatically negative. So even if you want to speak about it, or you want to, talk about the things that are, even though his situation is what's, put on the platform, or what's being spoken about, we're not, it's not necessarily like Marlon says, it's not like we're just sympathizing with him. We're just thinking about the generations to come, the young Black boys to come. And it's hard for people. I feel like now, especially with how cancel culture and everything is now, it's really hard for people to have those conversations, because as soon as you start, or as soon as you even try to bring up those points that are much more important, like what we learn from it, which is much more important than, just cutting him out of everything and just like, okay, he got what he deserved, it's over with. No, how did he get here? That's an important conversation. But I feel like now it's hard because as soon as people get their emotions, it's hard for people to disagree but still have a conversation.
There's a quote from Jasmine Mann. She says at the end of this poem, it's about, I know you didn't mean to kill him, right? And she says, someone's baby became a murderer last night and no one remembered to pray for him, right? Like, that's who you're empathizing with. It's not that you're empathizing with what's kind of what will transpire is that, here is another baby that became this, and nobody remembered to cry for that baby, right? And I think about that when I see, because I got an opportunity to teach the same students like for 4 years, so I can remember like, when they were just learning how to shoot dice, right, to when they end up in the newspaper, right? And it's tough, right? Because I know them as what they were, right? But the people in the comment section, they don't see that, right? And they don't see, like you said, the dash. They don't see like what kind of occurred there. I wanna first thank everybody for coming in, and Marlon for giving us this time. It was awesome, and I hope someone drops it in the WeChat so I can show some of it to my students.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. Amazing talk.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marlon. It's been
Thank you.
Marlon, do you sell signed copies of your book?
Do I sell signed copies of my book?
Yeah.
I have some now, yeah.
Okay, so I know it's gonna be worth a whole lot of money one day, so I need to go.
You're a bad brother, man.
Wait, let me recall. Let me see. Do I sell signed copies of my book?
Not like copies of your book that you signed.
Okay. I haven't as of yet.
Okay.
But it's something I'm considering. I mean, from a business perspective, I should be. Let me just say that.
Okay.
From a humanistic perspective,
so when you
I'm
ready,
giving books away to get dudes on the block. And boy, I'm in Brooklyn. I'm in Bed-Stuy now, so I'm not too far from Halsey. Whoever said that, but like,
yeah, that was me. But I'm in a whole nother state now. That was grind hard. This is I'm in smooth sailing now.
Well, we can email and we can make stuff happen. that was a good one.
Is Marlon info in the chat? Marlon info's in the chat.
I'll put it in there.
Yeah, please do. Yeah,
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch.
Hey, you slip it. You slip it, Ishmael.
Hey,
Listen, I have a question for Marlon.
Oh, that's Derek, the
Go,
one of the
Marlon,
architects.
I actually grew up, on Ocean Pacific. I lived on 1244 Pacific Street.
Woo.
So, yeah. So, and I was there in 1990. Well, and I also was on St. Mark's and Rochester. So when you mentioned in your book, those two streets, that's actually where I was actually grew up as well. So in terms of, so when you were mentioning this stuff, I'm like, oh, the fish store, the laundromat, it's right there. But as a community, with all the stuff that's going on, as a community, where do you think we need to go as a community in terms of just uplifting our kids? What do we need to do collectively to uplift our community?
Yeah, I think we've been doing it, right? I think, I mean, it reminds me of a book, Where Do We Go From Here, Martin Luther King, right? Back in the day. But like, one thing I want to say, I think we're doing it, right? I think sometimes we get caught in, there's obviously things that can be done better, things that can become more operationalized, things that can be systemic, things that we can create that haven't been done before. But I also always want to also acknowledge that some things are people have always been doing things in our communities. Part of the thing we need to be doing and we can be doing to go from here is to amplify what has been being done in the communities, right? So I think about violence, for instance, like gun violence, particularly now. Like as a child on Notion Avenue, I remember there were people in our neighborhoods doing like little marches and doing things and handing out leaflets around it, right? There were people who were organizing in our neighborhoods. They just didn't have the resources. People might not be giving them much attention. Maybe they didn't know how to amplify the message, etc. I think we need to amplify what's happening already. I know they are brilliant people. I mean, this book talk here, right? And the things we're talking about, and we're talking about masculinity, conversation around masculinity that we have been here in this Zoom, we weren't having when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. It just wasn't happening. Like that wasn't happening, and not in a way in which people feel comfortable saying it outside of their own living room, bedroom, or community center, right? People are saying it out loudly in much more ways. Someone here, I think it was Abdul, who may have said like, you know, kids are asking different questions now. I guess to answer your point is that one thing that we need to do is acknowledge that we are doing the work as it is. That's important because that incentivizes us to continue to do it and to bring more people on board. Acknowledge like this shit is happening. But the other thing that I think we also need to be doing, and one of the things that I think is I've learned from my book after reading it, is engaging in all these conversations, our educational system. I don't think like how many of us are being missed in there? Like how many things are being missed from our young people who are going through, particularly public schools, right? How many things are being missed from these young people? And I, in speaking with educators since I've written this book, and like they pointed out to me now, well, this should have happened when this happened at this school. When in 9th grade, this should have happened. When you got transferred, when I got transferred from Westinghouse High School to Martin Luther King High School from 9th to 10th grade because I got jumped in 9th grade. When I got to 10th grade in the new school, nobody asked me nothing about how you feeling.
Yeah.
Not one person, nobody asked me a question, and I was more than happy to act like nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that, like, I think that's one of the things we can do a little bit more is engaging our educators, and not only from a place of critique and criticism, but also like uplifting like the places where they are missing things and where we can help them see what we're missing in our young people. Because all our kids, whether they go into jail or otherwise, they go to schools at some point. They're in a school building at some point, and they spend a lot of their time there. And we want to make sure that those places are equipped and resourced well enough to be able to take care of their time with our young people.
So I wanted to say something real quick as it pertains to that. And I think, there's a gentleman, Abdul mentioned this as well. And I think what we shouldn't do, so we're having this conversation right now. And the last thing we're concerned about is what anyone else thinks. So when he said that, he thinks that this is a challenging time because of cancel culture and this and the other, we make the mistake of needing satisfaction or gratification or like approval for us to do what we need to do. Remember the scene in Rosewood when everything was about to go left and they were having the meeting in the church? And normally they used to let the John Voight character come into the meetings because he was a friend of the Black people. And then they finally figured out, yeah, we're gonna need you to step. Don Cheadle was like, yeah, we don't need you to participate in this conversation, because they knew they were gonna say some things that, as much of a friend as he may have been to them, he was gonna run right back out there and be like, yo, the niggas is about to do X, Y, Z, or they know what you're about to do. We need to stop having these conversations in forums other than the ones that we control, because then we can say whatever we want to without any concerns about who's gonna do what or whatever. So it's like you take 20 of us and put 200 young Black men in there and just have conversations with them. That's what's going to move us, as opposed to us thinking that we got to mainline it and we got to get it checked off and let's hope we don't offend them. I'm not worried about offending them. We shouldn't be, because we're talking about the life and soul of our existence. And if we do it trying to go and navigate around them and whether or not they're going to be okay with it, we're going to be right where we are in another damn 50 years. Those crickets.
I had to find my unmute button, man. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you,
Again,
Marlon.
guys. Good to see you, man. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Good night, guys. Happy birthday
night.
again, Derek.
Good night.
Happy brothers. Happy birthday.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
birthday, man. And
Yeah, happy birthday.
All right,
Uncle
guys.
Mike, make sure you download the recording.
Definitely will. And I'll
Great
upload.
job, Akil.
All right. Thank you.
all right,
Thanks,
good night,
Jason.
everybody.
Hey, guys.
Great
Bye-bye.
job, Jared. Thank you, guys.
Oh, love.